Morning. So, from time to time we have what's really cool actually is that sounded like an ADD moment right there, didn't it? Okay, so from time to time we have a special guests with us. And every week, it's really cool because every week we actually have visitors with us. And you are actually special because we create our church, we try to create an environment in which, people would be able to stumble out of Luke's on Saturday night and into church on Sunday morning and feel loved and affirmed and feel like this is a place I may not believe everything that you guys believe, but this is a place where I could probably come back to and actually bring my family to and begin this exploration of God and listen and ask questions in this environment. That's the kind of environment we try to create. And so I just want to say welcome to everyone who's here. And but from time to time, we'll have a guest who comes through, and they're just they're a gift to the church. And so this morning we have one. If you don't know, we don't talk about it a lot because we don't believe that denominations can save you. Only Jesus can ultimately change your life. But our church is connected to a larger network of denomination. It's called the Free Methodist Church. It's got a great history. And this morning, we have a representative from the Free Methodist Church with us this morning, Dr. Brown. So Dr. Brown, if you just want to come up, he is what in our network is called a superintendent. And so basically, he is the person to whom I report immediately. And, ultimately it's Jesus, and then Jesus, and then Sherry, and then the bishop, and then you, right? Is that how that goes? And when he sent me a note last week, and you're going to take me out to lunch afterwards. Is that how we're doing that? Okay. Yes. And I asked him, I said, would you bring a word of greeting to us from the church? This is Church 180, and we're just glad and honored that you're here this morning. So bring us a word, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Pastor. It's just really exciting for Sylvia and I to be with you here this morning, and just since God is here. There are a lot of reasons why people go to church, and some of them are not very satisfying. But if you come to church and you sense that God is here, then everything else really works out well. In fact, as we were singing, I was thinking about part of the reason why we really enjoy.
You're probably making Mike really stressed by standing on this.
Okay.
Thing. Right, sorry.
I'll stand over here, okay? I was thinking about why we really enjoy coming to Church 180. And part of it is that we know we're always going to get a chance to sing praise to the Lord with real passion. We know you're always going to share a word from God that really will help us understand how life ought to be lived. And also, as we were singing one of those hymns, I realized here's a group of people who know that God is love. All of our world gives us a different kind of message. God's some kind of ogre or something like that, or maybe doesn't even care about us at all. But here's a group of people who know that God is love. And that God really can work in everything, even the bad stuff. He doesn't send it, but he can work in it. So thanks so much for a chance just to be with you. And thank you. Let's just stay open to God.
Really cool. Before you go, wonder if we get a selfie for our Instagram page. Let's turn this way. Actually, I think we just did a dance. Anybody get that on video? That was really bad. One more. Yeah, okay. Very good. Thank you, Dr. Brown. All right, so, let me just say this right up front. I love this church. I'm always proud of our church, and I just love when people who are my overseers come and the benefit of being a part of a denomination is there's financial accountability, so we're not running a scam. There's theological accountability, so we're not creating a cult. And it also gives us access to lots of opportunities to serve and partnerships, global partnerships. So it's a really cool opportunity for us. And so I'm always excited when my overseers come and see our church, because I love this church and I'm proud of it. So today we're going to start a brand new series called What's in Your Box. And the premise of this whole series is this. We handle a box based on what we believe is inside. So we will handle a box with care or carelessness based on what we believe to be inside of the box. So, for instance, this is a box from PetSmart. You know what they put in these boxes? Critters, right. And so last night, actually, we went to PetSmart and we got a critter. We got a guinea pig, our fourth guinea pig in our house. And that's because that's what we need is more guinea pigs in a house, right? And so we got one of these things. Now, when we got home, we took the guinea pig out, right? So there's no guinea pig in there now, all right? And we took it out, and then I went out into the garage, and I did that. It's now empty. It's an empty box. It's for the recycling bin. There's nothing in there, so the way I treat the box isn't necessarily, it doesn't really matter, right? It's an empty box. But then there's this box. Anybody know what's in that? A MacBook Pro. So we'll do that too. I'm just kidding. There's no computer in there. Right. Some of you are like, oh. But there was a point when there was actually a computer in there, and at that point, we certainly wouldn't throw that, would we? We're going to treat that with a tremendous amount of care because there's something incredibly valuable in that box. So we will handle that box with incredible care. And then there's this box. And this box, well, this box is filled with old clothes for Goodwill, right? So we're going to treat this box in a completely different way than we would treat the box with a MacBook Pro in it. Or we're going to treat it completely differently than we would treat the box that had a live guinea pig in it, right? And so this is one of those boxes, you know what's in it, so you're probably just going to go ahead and you're going to throw it in the truck and run off to Goodwill with that box, right? So the point that we're trying to make here is simply this. We treat a box based on, the way we treat the box is based upon what we believe is in the box. Does that make sense, right? Now, we use context to help us decide what's in the box. So for instance, there's an external context, and that is what I see. So if I see a Mac box, if I were to see this box in a Apple store, I would assume what? There's a computer in it, right? Because the context is I'm in a store that sells Mac products, and everywhere I look, there's Mac products. So if I see this box in an Apple store, my assumption is probably this. There's something of high value in there. Now, if you're riding down the street and it was Thursday, in my neighborhood, Thursday's trash pickup day. If you're riding down my street on a Thursday and you saw this sitting at the curb, what would you assume? There's nothing in it. There's nothing of value in that box. That's why it's sitting on. So you've used context to determine that box probably doesn't have value in it. In an Apple store, it probably has something valuable in it. On the roadside, there's probably not much value in it. You've used your context to determine what's in the box. Now, I believe we also have an internal context, and that is what I feel. So for instance, if I'm hungry, the only Mac I want is a Big Mac, right? If I'm in a war zone and I'm being shot at, like I don't want that kind of Mac, right? So what I see helps me determine what's in the box, and what I feel helps me determine how valuable what is in the box. Okay? Now, what's crazy about this whole thing is that we actually treat ourselves and we treat others similar to the way we treat a box. We handle with care, or we are careless based on what we believe is inside of the box. And we use context to determine that. So we will see some people and we'll say, based on what I see, there's value or there's no value in that box. Or, sometimes we have a feeling about someone, right? Based on what I feel when I'm around them, there's value or there's no value in that box. And so we treat them accordingly. We treat them to the context, what we see or what we feel. That is the way we determine whether or not, for the most part, whether or not there's value in the box in front of us. We treat other people like that, and we unfortunately sometimes treat ourselves like that. And see, here's the crazy thing. Each one of us has a context. The family in which you grew up. That's part of your context. So we're asking the question now, what's in your box? Is there something valuable, or are you to be handled with care? Or is there not much value in there and you can kind of be careless and reckless with the way you present yourself, with the way you treat yourself, with the way you treat others? Is there something of value in there, or is there not? So part of our context is the family in which we grew up in. Some of you were fortunate enough to grow up in families that as, from the earliest age, you knew there was something special in you, and you were treated like you were in an Apple store. You were handled carefully. That you were taught that you were worth, and there was great value in your box. Others of you, unfortunately, because of the family in which you grew up, were treated like Thursday morning trash day. Not much value in the box. All the good stuff is gone. Part of your context are words that have been spoken to you, or words that you've spoken to yourself. I mean, some of you throughout the course of your life have heard some pretty harsh words, and they've been poured into your box. Words like, you're stupid, you're not going to get this, you probably shouldn't even try. And you've begun to reciprocate and speak those words to yourself and to others. And as you look at the box of you, those are the kind of things that are in your box. And then experiences that you've had. Some of you have been fortunate enough to have great experiences. You've had family or friends that along the way enabled you to have incredible experiences that built confidence, that developed skills, that instilled good habits. And others of you have not had the opportunity to have those great experiences. And so when you look at yourself, the question is this: am I a box in an Apple store, or am I a box on the side of the curb? And based on our context, based on the family in which we grew up, based on the experiences that we've had, based on the words that we've heard and the words in which we speak to ourselves, we begin to think about ourselves and we begin to handle ourselves accordingly. If we think there's value in our box, we handle with care. If we think there's garbage in the box, we handle carelessly. So I want to tell you a story. This is Paul Potts. By the way, throughout this teaching series, if you're on Twitter and you're on Facebook, we actually encourage you to do that. Pull out your phone and tweet and use, post on Facebook something that might be helpful for you. Use this hashtag, what's in your box. And then if you go onto Facebook and you search up the hashtag, what's on your box, you can find what everybody's saying about this conversation that we're getting ready to have the next couple of weeks. Paul is a world famous opera singer. And so for the last, I picked up this book a while back. This is his autobiography, One Chance. And so I read it, and I've been watching YouTube videos of Paul Potts, the opera singer, which has led me to, Pavarotti and the Three Tenors. So our house has been filled with opera, and Sherry is very excited about my budding career as an opera singer, I can assure you. But it all started when I picked up this book and began to read about this guy. He averages 100 concerts per year around the world. Like, he travels all over the globe. His first album, which was called One Chance, it actually was the #1 album in 13 countries. He sang in front of crowds as large as 69,000 people. His YouTube videos have millions of hits. One of them has over 140 million views on one of his YouTube videos. He's written an autobiography right here. And a movie has actually been made about his life by the same title, One Chance. And it was a movie that was directed by a gentleman named David Frankel, who was the director for Meryl Streep's movie called The Devil Wears Prada. You've seen that. If you're a guy, you don't need to raise your hand, but all right, okay? So life is good for this man. Life is good for Paul Potts. When people see the Paul Potts box, they handle it with care because there's something of tremendous value in here. There's lots of good in this box. So they treat it with care, and they treat him with respect, and they treat him with honor. And when he comes, they make sure that he's well received because there's value. But it wasn't always that way. See, when he was growing up, Paul was abused in every possible way. Verbally, abused. The things that were said to this kid will just literally make your gut turn over. Physically abused. I mean, I'm talking about hit, kicked by his peers. In fact, one time he worked up the courage to ask, why do you do this to me? Why do you treat me like this? And their response was this: because you're you. You're the empty box on the side of the curb, Paul Potts. That's why we treat you like that. He was sexually abused multiple times. This guy had an incredibly terrible self-image. He believed there was nothing good in his box? Nothing. But he loved to sing. He had a dream that maybe someday his ability to sing would take him away from this place of this dark place, this lonely place, this place of abuse, this place of there's horror for him. He was bullied, he was abused, he had multiple medical problems, but he ended up ultimately selling cell phones and abandoning his dream of singing. He realized one day, I'm just never going to make it. So I guess I'll just sell phones. And that's what he was doing until something happened. And I want to read it to you in his own words. He said, I moved to the Port Talbot branch, a branch of cell phone stores there in Port Talbot, in November of 2006. Again, I was soon making steady progress in the store and trying to change people's attitudes there. Despite the commuting having come down, I was still working long hours and not enjoying any kind of social life. I was also constantly mourning the loss of my singing. He'd realized, this is something that's never going to be a reality for me. I wondered whether I would ever sing in public again. I was barely able to sing at home, and as we had next-door neighbors with young children and thin walls. And I don't know if you guys know, but opera's kind of loud, right? I was rarely home early enough to sing without disturbing them. At this point, I saw no future singing at all. At this point, he really began to believe, I'm the box at the curb. There's no value in this box. Late one night, while doing emails and working on figures on the computer, I came across a pop-up window. I tried to close it down, but ended up maximizing it instead. In front of me, I saw Simon Cowell. He was inviting people to apply to take part in a new ITV show called Britain's Got Talent. I briefly looked at the video clip and read on. Despite myself, he said, I started filling out the online form. I didn't know where it would lead, and as I typed in the details, I wondered why I was bothering. I stared at my reflection in the laptop screen. What the heck was I doing? Almost out loud, I asked myself why they would ever pick me. Listen, you're going to hear the box talking. You ready? Why they would ever pick me. I sang the wrong kind of music. I was too ugly, too fat, too old. To me, I was everything they were not looking for. I got to the end of the application and reached the option to send or cancel. I truly didn't know what to do. I didn't want to be one of those contestants people laughed at. Yet another quiet voice inside was telling me that I would never know unless I tried. I noticed that the entries closed the following morning, so just leaving it and coming back later was not an option. I decided to leave it up to chance. Picking up a 10-pence piece, I decided to play heads or tails. If it landed on heads, I would submit the application. If it landed on tails, I would close the pop-up window and never think about it again. I threw the coin in the air, and it landed. Heads. The journey could now begin. I was still convinced that it was lead nowhere, but I hit send and would have to wait and see. Now, I actually think there's a lot of people who are like Paul Potts. At some point in your life, you had this idea, you had this dream, you felt like maybe there is something of value in here. Maybe something could happen with me in my life. But then people began to say things and events began to happen and you had some bad experiences and you began to believe the words that were spoken to you and what you found is it wasn't long and you were living in a dark place. Over time, you begin to think differently about yourself. You begin to believe that the box didn't hold much value. But here's what I believe. I believe this can happen to anybody. See, I remember a phase in our life where we had gone through like failure after failure after failure in my own personal life. I've told you plenty of times the story about the church that we tried to start that never got started, and that was a huge, devastating loss. And after that, it just seemed like thing after thing after thing just kept going wrong and literally got to a place in my life where anything good that began to happen in my life, I immediately began to guard myself by saying, okay, when's the carpet going to get pulled out from under my feet again? And I've talked with enough people to realize I'm not the only one that's ever felt like that. You hit a point in your life where after so many hurts, so many disappointments, you actually begin to guard against the good by saying, it's good, but it's going to end real soon. So I'm just going to go ahead and put up a barrier now. You begin to believe the lie that the box is filled with not much, if anything. But I believe that just like people and experiences can change you for the worse, so people and experiences can change you for the better as well. Let me explain. Everybody doing good? All right. See, a long time ago, there was another Paul, and his name was Paul the Apostle. I mean, maybe not his last name, Apostle, but that's what we referred to him as, St. Paul or Paul the Apostle. And he wrote a number of letters which ultimately ended up in our Bible. And this particular letter, he wrote to a group of Christians in the city called Colossae. And he wrote some things to them that might actually be helpful for us as we begin this journey of opening up our box. He wrote about a person and an experience that was changing them for the better. And in his letter, he talked about some good news. And apparently this group of people had heard this good news and they had believed it. And it had actually begun as a process of them believing this good news. And it actually began to change their lives. This is how he said it in his letter. He said, this good news that came to you is going out all over the world. Like, this isn't just a little message that just you guys get. There's people all over the world that are hearing this good news. Look at what he said. It's bearing fruit everywhere by, say this with me, changing lives. Just as it, say it, changed your lives from the day you first heard and understood the truth about God's wonderful grace. Paul said there's this message, there's this information out there, there's this something out there. It's good news, and people who are hearing it are believing it, and it's actually changing their lives. And a few sentences later, Paul said, look, here's what the good news is. This is the good news that people are believing, and it's changing their lives. Look what he said. God has rescued us from the kingdom of darkness and transferred us into the kingdom of his dear Son, who purchased our freedom and forgave our sins. This is what he said. Look, all over the world, he said, people are hearing this and believing it, and it's changing their lives. Here's what they're believing. That God has rescued us. He's taken us from this place of darkness. He's taken us from this place where we see ourselves as having no value, of no hope, of no future. He's rescued us from this place, and he's taken us over here, and he's put us in the kingdom of his Son. He's put us in a place of light. He's put us in a place of peace and hope and a future. He said people all over the world are hearing this and they're actually believing it. Like, they had an experience with Jesus, the person Jesus, and it changed their context. It changed everything about them. It changed how they begin to view themselves. It changed how other people begin to view them. It changed how the things that they said to themselves. It changed the things that other people began to say to them. When they had an encounter with Jesus, it changed everything on the inside, which began to change everything on the outside. See, Christians, and again, I never assume that everyone in this room believes like we do, so I just want to take this opportunity to explain. This is what Christians believe. We believe that when we trust in Jesus, when we believe in Jesus, that he, through his Spirit, actually moves inside of us and begins to live inside of us. Now, here's the scoop. It's kind of like this. When I was single, I decorated a certain way. It's called I didn't. You guys know what I'm talking about? And then I got married. And now my house looks completely different because someone else moved in. Right? This is exactly what the Bible says. When we believe in Jesus, he moves in and he begins to make changes on the inside. And the inside begins to look completely different, which ultimately will affect the outside, which will affect the way you present yourself to people, which will affect the way people interact with you. And Paul said, listen, people all over the world are hearing this, they're believing it, and it's changing them. We believe that Jesus sets us free from the darkness. We believe that he forgives us for every stupid decision, for every destructive, for every selfish, for every thoughtless decision and action that we've ever taken. He forgives us of that. This is what Christians believe, that Jesus, go back. Jesus sets us free, right, from everything that's ever been said or done to us. Some of you, listen, some of you are living in a world your box is filled with negative and false words. Some of you have believed the lies that others have said to you and that you have said to yourself. Some of you have boxes that are filled with poison. And Paul said Jesus wants to come and he wants to set you free from that. And some of you for a long time have done things and said things to yourself and about yourself. You've done things and said things to others. And Paul said, Jesus wants to come and forgive you from that. He wants to set you free from what others have done to you, and he wants to forgive you for what you've done to yourself. Jesus essentially says, look, I want to come and pull all the bad out of your box, and I want to put good in your box. And in fact, a few sentences later in his letter, Paul said this. He said, look, Christ lives in you. When you trust in Jesus, Christ actually moves in. That's what's in your box when you believe in Jesus. That's why Christians are some of the most optimistic people in the world. Because when we look at people, we see hope. When we look at people, you may have a ton of bad mistakes. You may have made a ton of really stupid decisions. You may have a portfolio filled with garbage and embarrassing facts. But let me tell you something. When we see people, we see hope because of the one who lives within them. We see hope because of what's in their box, Jesus. A couple of weeks ago, I actually had a conversation with somebody, and they were wrestling with this. They said, how can God forgive me for the stuff that I've done? And then they began to tell me some of the stuff that they've done. I said, whoa, that's pretty significant. Like they've said some really bad things, and they've done some really they've taken destructive action. And yet, as they talked, my heart was filled with hope for this person, because what I realized is this: there's still hope for you. And here's why, because St. Paul said this. Look, he said, this good news that came to you is going out all over the world. There are people all over the world whose lives are being changed. It's bearing fruit, changing lives. Change your lives from the day you first heard it and understood the truth about, say this with me, God's wonderful grace. You see, here's what the whole idea of grace is. Grace essentially means this: you get something you don't deserve. God is gracious to me. He's gracious to you when we believe in Jesus. And when we believe in him, he lives in us through his Spirit, and he begins to change everything. I mean, it goes from the house that Paul lived in to the house that Paul and Sherry lived in. Like, this house is a lot better. And Paul, in his letter, said it like this: God has come to rescue us from this place of darkness and take us to a new kingdom with a new leader, Jesus, who lives inside of us and brings value to our box. He moves us from a place of darkness to light. He changes the contents of our box. Look what he said. Look at this. Jesus frees you from what others have said and done to you, and forgives you for the things you have said and done to yourself and others. This is what he does. He takes the junk out of your box and puts good and value in your box. So I would just say to you that what's in your box can absolutely be changed when you trust in Jesus. So let's go back to Paul Potts. So he hit send on this entry to participate in Britain's Got Talent. And a few weeks later, believe it or not, he actually got an invitation to participate in this show. Now, remember, this is a guy, Paul Potts, who for years has seen himself as only having garbage in his box. He saw his box. He's like, this is not a box in an Apple store. This is a box on the roadside ready for garbage pickup. Now, I want you to see something. And we watch this, I want you to see how people look at this man. At every phase in this, and what we're getting ready to see, I want you to watch how people look at this man. All right? Are you ready? Let's enjoy some opera.
But for the next contestant, the world of showbiz seems a million miles away.
It's Paul, a mobile phone salesman from South Wales.
By day, I sell mobile phones. My dream is to spend my life doing what I feel that I was born to do.
Paul, what are you here for today, Paul?
To sing opera. I've always wanted to sing as a career. Confidence has always been sort of like a difficult thing for me. I've always found it a little bit difficult to be completely confident in myself.
Okay, ready when you are. So you work at Carphone Warehouse, and you did that. I wasn't expecting that.
No, neither was I.
This was a complete breath of fresh air. I thought you were absolutely fantastic.
You have an incredible voice. I think if you keep singing like that, you are going to be one of the favourites to win this whole competition.
I think that we've got a case of a little lump of coal here that is going to turn into a diamond.
Okay. Moment of truth, young man. Piers.
Absolutely yes.
Amanda.
Yes.
Paul. You are through to the next round.
Congratulations.
Unbelievable. I had goose pimples.
You must be over the moon.
I am. A bit shocked at the moment. Oh, yeah.
And as Paul heads home happy, the judges think they might have found something special in Cardiff.
I like shows where somebody isn't a professional, has a talent, isn't aware of it, has a normal job, and then you see something else. I like that. And that's what that guy had.
Undiscovered little gem.
Yeah.
A frog that will turn into a prince.
That's amazing, isn't it? You know, I look at this, and the thing that strikes me most is, did you see how they looked at him when he said what he wanted to do? Look at this. This is how they looked at him. Rick, are you kidding me? Like, you're a short, fat, dumpy little dude. Your teeth are all jacked up. You can't sing opera. And then he opened his mouth. See, what they saw was a box that was sitting at the curb. But there was something in there. Something of value. Beauty. Goodness. Talent. And what I believe is that there are Paul Potts everywhere. I think there are people who've had a dream at some point, you've had a desire, you've had a hope that has somewhere along the line been squashed. People have expressed doubt, they've poo-pooed on your dream, and they just said basically, no, you are not cut out to do that. And you've believed it. Your box, you believe, doesn't hold much value. It doesn't look like there's anything in there, but I believe there can be. And this is the great hope of our faith, the Christian faith. We believe that Jesus can change us. We believe that Jesus can fill us. He can fill us with goodness. He can bring out all that value and all that talent. You know what's interesting about the Paul Potts story is that when he actually he went to college and he studied theology. So somewhere along the way, his faith in someone bigger than he prompted this journey. I believe Jesus can do something similar for us. He can fill us with goodness and allow us to see that which is in us, which is good. See, again, as Christians, we believe Jesus came into this world. He was crucified and buried. He rose from the dead 3 days later. And he's alive today, and he's ready to live through his Spirit in the hearts of those who will trust him. And this is what we believe about Jesus, right here. That he came to free us and forgive us and fill our box with goodness and value. And it really starts when we say something like this. I'm going to say a prayer. I encourage you just to take a moment just to close your eyes as we begin this journey of opening our box and seeing what is true inside of us. Jesus, for a long time I have believed what others said about me. I have believed that I deserved what others have done to me. I have allowed those beliefs to fill my box with garbage. I have said things about myself and done things to myself that have perpetuated that ugly thinking. St. Paul said that you came to free me and forgive me, to move me from a place of darkness and disappointment to a place of light and fulfillment. Today I want you to fill my box with your love. I want you to fill my box with a vision of what my life can be, what you made me for. Please set me free from what I've heard and what I've believed about myself, and give me power to love and believe you. I ask forgiveness for my sins and strength to begin believing what you say about me. Amen. Now here's what I want to do is to begin this conversation. In 3 weeks, on October 25th, we're actually going to have a time in our service, right in church, where you can go public with your faith through baptism. This will be a chance for you to say to God, to yourself, to your family, to your friends, to anyone you want, I have Jesus in here, and He makes me incredibly valuable. He's taken me from a dark place filled with disappointment and anger and guilt to a place where there's hope and there's confidence, there's vision, there's passion, there's life. That's what He does in my box. I want you to begin thinking about taking that step, preparing your heart, preparing your life to say to Jesus, would you be the one in my box? The one who takes me from the curbside and puts me on the shelf in the Apple store. The one who takes me from the guy who has no confidence and can't do anything to the guy who's now touring the world, living the dream that you gave me. This is what we want to do. Now, Father, we've started a conversation today. And there are men and women in this room, I'm confident of it, Lord, that have said things and heard things and believed things to themselves. They've spoken lies, they've spoken destructive words, they've believed things that have held them captive in a dark place. And God, you said, here's some good news. I have good news. Jesus has come to take you from that dark place to a place of hope and light. He's come to take the bad out and put the good in. He's come to unearth the value in you. And I pray, Lord, as we begin this conversation today and as we have it the next several weeks, that every man and every woman in this room would begin to believe that when I trust in Jesus, He fills me up with goodness. He fills me up with love. He fills me up with passion and desire and strength and courage. He brings goodness into my box. That's what's in my box. I thank you, Father, for the opportunity to be in this room today and to look at your word and be encouraged and be affirmed and be instructed by your word. I pray a blessing on every man and woman as we begin this journey, that we would look inside of us and begin to believe something different about who we are, about what's in our box. We're valuable because Jesus is in us when we believe in Him. Go with us this morning, Father, and encourage those who are discouraged. Lift up those who are weak. Those who are well, give them high fives, encourage, affirm. In the name of Jesus, this is our prayer this morning. Amen. God bless.